I enjoy coming to work every day knowing that clients are depending on me to guide them through whatever financial needs they have.
Every client we have is different. And so it's really about finding out what's really the most important thing per client.
With financial planning, everything is interconnected. So a comprehensive plan means that you're taking care of income needs now, income needs in the intermediate term, and income needs long term. We'll do an asset cycle portfolio. We'll do a riskalyze test. We'll do a life insurance audit or a life insurance review.
And so when we build a deep relationship with our clients, then we can take a step back and then we can look at different options to help them specifically get to their goals. One of the things I feel our job is as advisors is to introduce strategies to clients that maybe they did not know that they were out there. But it's our idea, our job to come out and say, have you ever thought about this?
And the planning it's not always about income, but a lot of it is also about the legacy. So the element of family is very important to us, and it's important to our clients. Welcome to Financially Speaking with Jeff Bush. My name is Jeff Bush, and I'll be the host of today's show. And in a minute, I'm going to be bringing on my partner and my colleague, Barry Waronker. Barry recently helped to write a book. It's called You're in Control. So we're going to tell you a little bit later in the show on how you can get a copy of our book. But first off, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that we've been here on PCTV now for 4 years. And it seems like it was just yesterday that we started doing the show here, but we've had such overwhelming progress and such overwhelming response to our show. And the reason why we originally did the show was because not only do we get exposure here in the Pottstown area and on a local cable, but the show's also broadcast on the PCTV network, which is the PCTVnetwork.com. And we also show it on our website, which is informedfamily.com. So without further ado, I want to now introduce my partner and colleague, Barry Waronker. Well, hello, Barry, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. It's great to be with you. You know, this is a 4-year anniversary for our show. We're coming up on our our 18th anniversary, 17th anniversary of Informed Family Financial Services, and you know, it's a real good thing to get your message out and educate people about the financial decisions that are going to affect them. And of course, most of our clients are, you know, looking to retire or thinking seriously about retirement or already in retirement. And you mentioned the book that You're in Control book. It was a really a compliment that I was invited by a group of nationally financial planners and financial advisors, and I think there's about 14 chapters, and I was offered the opportunity to write a chapter on long-term care, and that's the other parts of the book are very important. They talk a lot about how to grow your money during retirement, how to make sure you have enough income, a lot of different systems that advisors use. So it's a very great tool for anybody who wants to learn about planning, retirement planning, and financial planning in general. And then I focused on a chapter, as I mentioned, on long-term care.
Yeah. So Barry, the chapter that you wrote is called Addressing the Long-Term Healthcare Threat with Lazy Assets. So, and of course, Barry, your background is really long-term care, and your experience goes back well over 25 years. and you've done a lot. You've seen a lot. So really, who better to write the chapter on long-term care than you? So I think you are truly an expert in this field. What inspired you to write this book or write part of the book?
Well, I guess it's anybody who's serious about having a solid retirement. The first job is to make sure that you have enough income in retirement, and it's consistent income, and it's growing income because things get more expensive, and people are retiring for longer and longer periods. Longevity studies show that a married couple, it's a better than 25% chance that one of them is going to have a significant long-term care experience. And so long-term care is kind of the wild card in financial planning, and it's kind of a thing that some advisors are uncomfortable talking about it, and some clients are uncomfortable talking about it. Sometimes it's just kind of swept under the rug. But I got into the business of working with people and working with their financial issues. I started strictly doing long-term care, and I did that for about 5 years, just going back into the late 80s and early 90s. And so and then we evolved our practice where I brought my long-term care clients into Informed Family, and we've expanded our practice with those clients. But I've had the opportunity to see over a period of 25 years or more people making a decision to buy long-term care or not, and then clients that I've had as clients with long-term care policies now, as you mentioned, well over 20 years, and I'm seeing the claims come in. I'm getting calls from people that I met with 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago or more who need help. So I kind of seen the whole experience from start to finish, and there's a lot of misconceptions, and I think people need to realize that there's a risk, and they have to make a decision how they're going to handle that risk. And that decision might include doing nothing about it, but it should be a conscious decision because it's a real risk.
Well, so misconceptions and misunderstandings, and it's I give you a lot of credit because you've been really one to get information out there and really put yourself kind of beyond just being a salesperson, and you've really been one to educate. And I know you've educated our clients on this. So it's really to your credit that you've taken such a strong stance on this very important subject. So Barry, for our viewers out there, what are the different types of care? How does long-term care take its form?
That's a good question. One of the things that people think about, they think of, first of all, that long-term care will never happen to me, will never happen to someone in my family. So their experience is pretty much colored either by whether they've had a long-term care experience in the family or they haven't. One of the biggest misconceptions is people think, well, I've got Medicare once I hit 65, and doesn't Medicare cover me for my health? And the answer is, to a very limited degree, Medicare covers things that are considered long-term chronic illnesses that aren't really going to get better. They might cover you if you hurt yourself, fall, have a stroke, whatnot, cover you for a period of maybe 90 days or 100 days. But fairly quickly, the burden falls on you that you have to pay for long-term care. And the average stay can be in the 2 or 3 year range. And the cost of just a nursing home room, even shared with another person, can be well over $90,000, $100,000 a year or more. So it's a big expense, and you have to pay for it if you have the assets available to pay for it. And it's an unfortunate situation. Once you're in it, there's not a whole lot you can do. But when you look at the opportunities, how to handle it, they basically really come down to pretty much 4 ways of handling it. One is you self-insure. That's you just decide, I've got assets, and if those assets get used for long-term care, so be it. And I'll take that risk, and that's self-insurance. And if you've got millions of dollars, you may feel that's the best way to go. But if you have, say, $300,000 or $400,000 in a nest egg, you may say, well, gee, I don't want that $300,000 or $400,000 to go to the nursing home. what can I do to protect it? So then you look to, there's insurance, and we'll talk about two types of insurance. One where you pay an annual or monthly premium and you pay as you go for the insurance. Another, which is a topic I covered in the book, which called put your lazy assets, refers to the fact that many people have a lot of cash sitting around, or something that's not really making them much money, and they have it there. Well, there are products out there where you can put some of that cash into an insurance account, where you can have the cash back anytime you want it. But if you need long-term care, they could pay for long-term care 2 or 3 or more times what you put into it.
Right.
That's a single deposit, but it's also liquid, and that you can get your money back.
Right.
And then the last way I'll mention is to set up yourself with a special kind of trust that would allow a person to get long-term care coverage in a nursing home, even though they have assets, if those assets are put into a irrevocable Medicaid compliant trust, which is a very specific, not for the everyday lawyer who's handling all different kinds of things, a very specific type of trust that we handle.
So really, this long-term care planning is really, it's really for the middle class, as I see it, because if you're poor, if you don't have many assets, then this type of advanced planning really doesn't do you a whole lot of good, because there's not a whole lot of assets for them to take to cover long-term care. And then if you're super wealthy, then you can pretty much take care of the expense yourself, as you said, self-insure. So it's really, what would you say? Well, how would you limit the? So like 300,000.
Oh, I would say if you've got available or investable assets in the range of I'd say 300,000 or 400,000 up to $1 million or more. Long-term care is something that could either wipe out those assets fairly quickly, or maybe reduce them by half or 3/4. So those are people that should look and say, well, does insurance make sense? And if so, can I get the insurance? How do I get it? Where do I find it? It's a lot. It's an area that there's a lot of questions that have to be answered. So I mean, our way of doing it is, when we talk to a client, we're not going to sell them a long-term care insurance policy. What we're going to do is ask them questions. What would happen if this? What would you do if this happened? What would you do if that happened? How would you handle that expense? Are you comfortable with that? What are you worried about? And it's part of a comprehensive financial plan, in that it fits in with all the other things going on in your life. It's not just sold in a vacuum. And we may recommend a traditional long-term care type of coverage from a company. One company might talk about the lazy asset approach, where you're putting an asset that's not making much money into something that's going to leverage you with 2 or 3 times that asset's ability to pay for care. Or maybe you like the idea of a Medicaid compliant trust, in which case, if you're our client, we'll help you and put you in touch. You'll work with a lawyer who specializes in that, a very good lawyer that we work with, and work through it that way. But it's always part of the plan, and it's one piece of the puzzle.
Barry, so you've talked to hundreds of, if not thousands of families over the course of your career. What would you say are some of the most common objections to addressing this very important subject? Why do people not cover the risk?
Well, it's emotion. It's personal feelings about what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to my wife or husband, what's going to happen to my kids if I need long-term care. And many people just can't there's denial. It's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to my spouse. It happens to other people, and especially if they've never had the experience in their family where someone they care about pretty much lost most of their assets because they landed in long-term care, and especially so if the person they were married to causes those assets to be spent down to a very, very low level. the survivor really is the one who gets the biggest protection, because the survivor, if they can
Sure.
protect those assets, then they've got something to live on once the long-term care experience has run its course. And but denial is a very powerful emotion. We all use it. We all do. I mean, there's things you just don't want to think about. And this is one of those things that if you can help people just for a 20-minute conversation, really talk about this and make sure that they know the risks they're facing, and make sure they know the options for dealing with it, and help them make a good decision that works for them.
Yeah. Do you ever, in your experience, do you ever hear people say, well, it's too expensive, or, I can't afford it, or, how do you handle that? And then also, how does that translate into, in your book, you use the what you call the lazy asset approach. How can you transform that objection that you get, it's too expensive, into saying, well, it's really an asset-based approach to solving the problem rather than an income-based approach?
Well, let's talk about this, and I'm just going to use some round numbers here, and kind of talking about how an asset-based care plan might appeal to somebody, whereas they don't like the idea of writing checks for $3,000 a year, or $300 a month, $400 a month. As they go into retirement, a lot of people just don't want to incur new bills, new obligations. So, if we say, look, you've got, maybe let's say you're sitting on $100,000 that's sitting in the bank. We've got a lot of people that have that as a case. Just they don't really want to invest it. They don't want to lose it. They don't really aren't excited about the idea of risking it and making a lot of money on it, and they want some money, something they can turn to if they need for the unexpected. So we might suggest, depending on their age and their health, and whether they're male or female, that $100,000, we might suggest, hey, you know what, at your age and with your health, we could put that $100,000 into a single pay life insurance policy that has a long-term care benefit to it. So in other words, it might be a case, again, these numbers are rough numbers, and that $100,000, let's say it paid, if they were to pass away, it paid $150,000. And let's say if they needed long-term care, they might be able to get up to $300,000. And if they change their mind, which is a big objection, well, what if I change my mind? What if I decide this is not for me? I've thrown away money. Well, if they change their mind, they can get their $100,000 back, in most cases, right away. So it gives them the flexibility, doesn't lock them into a payment schedule. If they have that unforeseen emergency that they need to get their hands on the money, they can. But meanwhile, it's a death benefit that's more than what they put in, so their family gets more than what they have right now. Certainly not going to get more sitting in cash. And if they need, God forbid, long-term care, that $100,000 might provide $300,000 or more of long-term care, again, depending on the age and the health of the person and the particular policies. But those kind of programs are out there, and a lot of people don't realize that they could do that. And meanwhile, they're trying to, well, that $100,000, that's there. What if I need help? Well, $100,000 isn't going to do much for a long-term care situation. It might cover the first year. But if an average stay is 2 or 3 years, why not leverage it to cover 3 or 4 years, as it might in many cases?
Yeah, and when you think about it, that's actually one of the objections that you get with long-term care is, unlike any other insurance, like people say, well, what happens if I pay premiums all those years and I never need, I never use the insurance, I never need the care. You hear that with long-term care. You don't hear that with any other insurance. Like, you don't hear people say, gee, I insured my house for the last 20 years and it never burned down and I never got to use my insurance. And people just don't say that. Or my car. I've had insurance on my car all these years and I never got into it. I never got to use that insurance. I never got into an accident.
It's really, you should try to run it into a wall sometime just to get your money's worth out of you.
I know. But people say that with long-term care. Do you hear that?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned life insurance. And I mentioned that situation where someone puts a block of money into a life insurance policy with a death benefit and a long-term care benefit that's much greater, and money back if they don't want it. We also see writing a lot of these plans for people where it's just a straight ahead life insurance policy. And let's say it costs, I don't know, $3,000 a year. And again, depending on age and sex and health, let's say it gets them $200,000 of a death benefit. And they're comfortable paying that, $3,000 a year. Well, those policies, some of them are now available where the rider that will allow the person who holds that policy to access the death benefit while they're alive if they meet the requirements of needing a long-term
Sure.
care coverage. And those are really great
Sure.
because people will get life insurance because they know they will eventually
Yeah.
die. Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah.
So as
You're
long
going
as
to die,
yeah.
and it's going to, and in a best case scenario where you don't need the long-term care, you're going to get your heirs are going to get a tax-free death benefit.
They'll get a tax-free death benefit, and they'll get it's a safe place to put your money because the insurance company has guarantees as to what you're going to get, and so you know what you're getting. And if God forbid you do need long-term care, that policy might provide $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a year, a month rather, of care, which could keep the other assets available for the person to live on, especially a survivor. And those types of things. If you're a person who's got a life insurance policy that you've had for a number of years, we love to review them because oftentimes say, you know what, life insurance tables have changed. This was an expensive policy back when you bought it, but now rates have come way down, and we have very competitive multiple carriers that we can shop around. And you might be able to replace that life insurance policy with a bigger death benefit, maybe a smaller premium, and get one that has one of these riders that allows you to access that death benefit should you need long-term
Sure.
care. So those things are when you find that situation, that's such a no-brainer because people say, well, I'm already paying this amount. What's wrong with getting more for that premium, more benefits, and what's wrong with having the money available when I need it if I land in a nursing home or assisted living?
Yeah.
And that's a very popular way to do it now because it's kind of takes that middle road and say, look, maybe I do believe it'll never happen to me, but in case it does, I've got some coverage, and in case it doesn't, my money's been safe, and my family will get a lot more than I've ever put into that policy in most cases. And plus the tax benefits.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're talking today with Barry Waronker. Barry was one of the contributors to the book You're in Control. You're in Control actually is available on Amazon, but we're going to put this offer out there for our viewers. We show this program periodically through the course of the month, but the first 10 people that call our office or email us, and we have our information up on the screen there. You can email us, you can call our office. We'll get you a copy of Barry's book, You're in Control. And really, Barry, I think I think you'd even be able to autograph one of these books, wouldn't you?
Well, Waronker is a difficult name for many people to spell, but I'm able to, and I will autograph it with every
You've
book
had a
I
lot of
send out.
practice.
Yeah, pretty good at it.
You've had a lot of practice. So, anyway, we'd love to get the information out there. Also, we have had the good fortune over the course of the past several months to be featured in the news, if you will. So you and me and our colleague Steve have been featured in Investopedia, the U.S. News and World Report. I wrote an article for the Reading Eagle. Steve was featured in the Norristown Patch. We've had some good media exposure, in addition to all this wonderful exposure we're getting here on PCTV. So with that being said, Barry, you know, we really in our practice we have really used a mindset of being downside protectors.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I think that you know we manage our practice in such a way that we're more concerned with protecting the downside, with providing guarantees, and really when you think about it, the long-term care aspect of it, that's really what that is, because you're protecting the downside. You're hoping that this doesn't happen to you. You're hoping that you never get faced with a long-term care situation. But what you're doing is you're putting yourself into a position where if it does happen, your family's not wiped out by this.
Absolutely, and you know, I'll often ask people, you know, let's say we're talking with someone who has a $500,000 or 700,000-800,000, whatever, that if you doubled your money, would your lifestyle change? And most people we say no, because by the time you're 60, 65, 70, even 55, you kind of who you are, and you're not going to change your life suddenly because you've got money. And I say, well, but if you lost half the money, would that change your life? Change the way you live? Maybe change the way your kids live or your grandchildren live. So, you know, if you're successful and you have something worth protecting, not only from an investment standpoint, but also from a risk of medical care, in this case long-term care insurance and long-term care protection, one way or the other, that's part of a plan. Otherwise, your plan is just a hope that things will work out, and a hope is not a plan.
Yeah. Well, very good, Barry. So this was a very enlightening show. We were able to talk about the book, You're in Control, and you had the opportunity to join forces with a lot of your associates throughout the country.
Some pretty heavy hitters,
some
people that really know their stuff.
Yep, successful financial advisors. So it's not just, you know, this book isn't just about long-term care. It's really about a lot of other very, very basic, very important financial planning concepts. So it really, you know, to your credit, you know, they included you in this book. And it was good that we were able to take this opportunity this morning to sit down and talk about really what the importance is of including financial planning, the long-term care as part of the financial plan. So with all that being said, we're going to sign off another show here. This is Financially Speaking with Jeff Bush.